1996 had been an incredible year for fighting games on the Sega Saturn. Among that deluge of greats came some of the most anticipated home conversions of Capcom's best arcade offerings. We had already seen the likes of X-Men Children of the Atom, but then came the first two Street Fighter Alpha games, and of course, the gorgeous Night Warriors Darkstalkers Revenge. The thing is, as good as all of those titles were, all of them came before the advent of the RAM expansion cartridges, which was a game changer for the genre. As 1997 came into focus, we received the mech-based fighting extravaganza Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, which was among Capcom's first to use the device. It was completely optional, and though you could see the advantage of using it upon close inspection, the RAM cart was otherwise an unproven asset at that point. For me, the big release coming that year was the quasi-sequel to X-Men Children of the Atom, the much anticipated Marvel Superheroes. Unlike X-Men, this new release would expand into the greater Marvel universe, allowing participants like Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, and a few others. It was released in August of 1997 for the Saturn, and like Cyberbots, it only optionally supported the RAM expansion cartridge. Did this mean it was a royal letdown, or did it use it to better the experience? Let's find out. The story here involves the ever-powerful Infinity Gems and the quest to possess them all. That of course brings in Thanos as the big baddie, and you'll need to understand the gameplay to have the best shot at defeating him. As you'd expect, that gameplay is heavily based on Street Fighter, just like the previous X-Men title. Quarter circle, half circle, and charge motions dominate the special moves. You also hold back to block, you can air block, and it has the traditional 3-punch and 3-kick button interface. You can do an infinity counter, which is the same as an alpha counter, plus you can pull off a roll to get into a better position. From there you get a number of moves that you'll recognize from the later Versus series of fighters. You can get an extra height with your super jump, dash forward and backwards with a double tap, and start an aerial rave or air combo that can give you all sorts of variety with your ground game and super combos. Unique to this game are the Infinity Stones and the powers they bestow should you choose to use them. By performing a quarter circle backwards motion with all 3 punch buttons, you will use the current Infinity Gem to aid you in battle. The Power Gem increases the damage of your attacks. The Time Gem increases your overall speed. The Space Gem gives you a much improved defense. The Mind Gem boosts your recharge for your super combo gauge. The Soul Gem replenishes your health. And finally the Reality Gem, which gives you a projectile-based attack that you can fire even when you're blocking. Some of these gems will augment your moves and some can give you entirely new abilities. Be careful while you are carrying gems. A solid hit will cause you to drop it, leaving it open for the other player. If you so happen to have multiple Infinity Gems on you, you can scroll through them by pressing both shoulder buttons at the same time. This can have the unwanted side effect of doing a move at an inopportune time, especially if the match is particularly heated. Game modes are few, with an arcade and versus option being your only real choices. I mentioned some of the fighters introduced in this game, but you still get some of the X-Men making a return. Wolverine, Juggernaut, Psylocke, and Magneto are here, as are some newcomers in the form of Shuma Gorath, Blackheart, Dr. Doom, and the previously mentioned Thanos, who acts as the game's final boss. There is a hidden Darkstalkers character named Anita, the little girl that was with Donovan. She is no pushover, though she was removed from the Western versions. 1 MB RAM expansion compatibility is optional and can be turned on and off in the options menu. The visuals of Marvel's superheroes are excellent. The fighters are huge, the colors eye-popping, and the backgrounds highly detailed. Directly compared to the arcade, they are virtually indistinguishable upon first glance. The Saturn renders things in a slightly different resolution that causes the fighters to appear larger, but other than that, it's difficult to spot any differences. Turning on the RAM card in the options also gives you some noticeable improvements to the animation. Without it, you lose about half the frames you saw in the original arcade, while the RAM cart restores many of those. The easiest way to see these differences are by using the larger characters, or by doing things like crouching. I wouldn't call it a night or day experience on most of these characters, but things are certainly closer to the original experience with it. Unfortunately, performance is a serious letdown in this conversion. Whether you use the RAM cartridge or not, there are two issues here: a hiccup or jitter issue that occurs frequently during the match, and slowdown that plays out with the more complex animations or when animations fire off quickly on the screen. This slowdown is ever present and even can be seen when the fighters are introduced. I'm not entirely sure whether it was Capcom's lack of familiarity with the RAM cartridge technology or if Capcom outsourced this to an outside developer, but the performance issues are felt in every matchup, and particularly on the larger characters. These micro pauses, slowdowns, and hiccups do affect your timing, and though I'd argue they don't break the game, they certainly require adjustment if you are an arcade veteran. This is a shame because otherwise it's an incredibly good-looking port that captures most of what made the arcade so impressive. Around the same time, the PlayStation also received a conversion of this, and while itself has some slowdown to contend with, it is nowhere near as serious or as frequent as it is on the Saturn. If you are a stickler for such things, this may make the Saturn edition the least attractive of the two. The sound design here is awesome and I love the music. The entire audio presentation is similar to the Versus games and is high energy and boisterous, just what these kinds of games need. I have some tracks to show you exactly what I mean. I imported this game back when it was first released in Japan. I immediately regretted that because it was released in the US only a couple of months later for a lot cheaper. Otherwise, I loved it and was only mildly annoyed by the performance problems I mentioned. For the sake of being thorough, there are a few other things you should know. The Saturn game also has some fairly long load times to contend with, whether you use the RAM expansion or not. I guess unpacking all that extra animation takes longer, and the compression was higher due to the first cartridge being only 1 megabyte in size. That's pure assumption admittedly, but either way the load times are a bit rough. I also hated that the Infinity Gems could only be cycled with the L and R being pressed together. Under duress, you'll miss this more than you think, and it gets to the point where you'll stop trying to do it. There is also a big problem with the AI in this game. It's completely borked, and even on the highest setting you will walk through this without any trouble whatsoever. In fact, this is level 8 difficulty right here. No strategy at all, I am just wailing away on the controller and the AI is leaving itself open to the thrashing. Arcade veterans will move on to a different version or fall back on emulation to get a more authentic experience. Casuals likely won't care about any of these issues I've mentioned and love the game to death regardless. I fell somewhere in between. I enjoyed playing with the Saturn controller and having that extra animation at home thanks to the RAM cartridge, but I admit back then I preferred the PlayStation edition when it came to gameplay. That puts the Saturn version here in a peculiar place when recommending it to people. If any performance issues are an immediate turnoff, go emulate it and stay away. If you play less for 30-hit aerial raves and more for fun, this can still be a great fighting game, especially with friends. Though the characters feel quite different in terms of moves and specials, each one has that familiar Street Fighter II flow. That means most of you will easily pick it up and play it with little direction. If you are in the camp that has access to both a Saturn and PlayStation, and you enjoy playing on original hardware, I'd point you in the direction of the latter first. The load times are better, the performance more tolerable, and the sound effects feature improved clarity. You do lose those extra frames of animation, but unless you love side-by-side comparisons, most of you probably won't even notice. One thing I can confidently tell you, my issues with Marvel superheroes on the Saturn are not nearly as serious as you may think. A quick look at the reviews back then reveal ratings that still say the Saturn game is a winner and well worth playing. Most of them mention the slowdown and performance problems, but rarely make much of it. GamePro still dropped an incredibly glowing review for it. GameFan made no bones about it and gave it a high score as well. Even when a publication went hard on it, it rarely was any lower than a 7 or so. When this game was released in the West, it retained its RAM cartridge compatibility. This was pretty significant because it's the only Capcom game released outside of Japan to do so. All in all, I'd say this one has a very mixed quality however, and you are gonna want to try it before you buy it. I definitely recommend also trying the PlayStation release, as it's far better than you may believe. For those that game on more modern console platforms, you'll want to check out Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection for the Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. There you also get a slew of great titles like The Punisher, X-Men Children of the Atom, and the Versus games right up to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It is generally regarded as a well-done package and worth the investment. While the Saturn version here was not Capcom's best work, just 3 months later, they dropped X-Men vs. Street Fighter and the 4 megabyte RAM expansion cartridge. And that, my friends, changed everything. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.